approach it is try to look at certainly the irrigation system and how
especially
efficient
with
it
the
is.
bird I think that's very key. Advantages also include
Hi, I'm David Huboy, Chairman of the Green Business Committee with the San Benito County Chamber of Commerce. Hey, welcome to Going Green, the television show sponsored by the Chamber to promote and celebrate economic vitality along with environmental sustainability. We support meeting present needs without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their needs. Today we will hear from guests about Water Resources Association of the San Benito County, water use strategies, issues of nuclear fission and the possibility of nuclear fusion, and the relationship of historic preservation to green objectives. My first guest is my fellow co-host, Sean Novak.
Hi,
welcome,
David.
Welcome, Sean.
Thank you, David.
Yeah. And Sean is the Water Conservation Program Manager for the Water Resources Association of San Benito County.
You got it. That's a mouthful.
I know it is. Glad I got that through.
Yeah.
But I understand you represent the City of Hollister, City of San Juan Bautista, and the county, Sunny Slope County Water District and the San Benito County Water District.
That's correct.
Sean, perhaps you can tell the viewers what the Water Resources Association does.
Yeah, we do. We focus on water conservation and water resource protection issues. First of all, I want to clarify when I say Water Resource Association San Benito County, it sounds like a big office, but it's actually just me, and I have a 3/4 time person to assist me out in the field. But we try to help people with water conservation and mainly being water efficient. Our most probably famous program is the free toilets we give out to people. And we give these toilets out to people that have already have toilets that are older than 1992, because those toilets used anywhere from 3.5 to 7 gallons per flush back in those days. And in '92, the government stepped in and said all toilets have to be 1.6 gallons per flush or less. So our object is to get all those toilets out of circulation, and in doing so, we give people incentives by giving them a free toilet. So that's worked out well. We've replaced over 6,000 toilets in the Hollister urban area. So,
wow.
Yeah, and you figure each toilet saves up to 16,000 gallons a year for an average family. So that's a lot of water saved.
A lot of water.
Oh, yeah. But we have other programs. We have rebates available for people that want to buy high efficiency clothes washing machines, because the top loading machines use about 40 to 50 gallons per load. The new machines use from 15 to 20 gallons per load. Oh, they also wring the clothes out more, so when you put them in the dryer, there's not as much energy being used to dry the washing machines. But they're still a little more expensive than traditional washers, so we help people get over that hump by offering them a $100 rebate if they buy an Energy Star rated washing machine.
Right,
Yeah.
Energy Star.
Yeah, so that's a really good program. And then another program that we got some grant monies from the state to operate is our water softener program. And this program is for people that have water softeners already installed in their home and they're older than 1999. Because again, those water softeners at that time were a lot less efficient than the ones today. The ones today have an on-demand system, so they'll only regenerate soft water when there's an actual need. Where the old ones had the clocks up there that you would preset to different times of the day. So if you're not home or not, that water's being regenerated and just going down the drain. So it's a big waste of water. They're able to process more hardness molecules per pound of salt than the old machines. They use less water, less electricity, so all the way around they're just much more efficient.
Great.
So we offer $150 to residents that replace their already existing water softeners that are older than 1999 with new technology. We give $150. And then there's some people who don't use their water softeners, and we'd like to see them demolished. So as an incentive, we're offering $300 to demolish that water softener without replacing it. So people can call me for details, because there are details, obviously. Yeah. We also do, we have some outreach programs. We have educational programs. I like to go into the schools in our area. I concentrate on the 5th grade, because that's what they're studying, the hydrologic cycle, the water cycle. And so I like to talk to them about that, tell them about our local water supply, you know, some of the issues that face us locally here. And it's a chance for me to get in there with water conservation at an early age so the kids start thinking about it.
Great, great.
Yeah, and we do that. And then we also offer landscape assistance, help people with their irrigation controllers. We offer classes. And then we go out to the farmers market and different venues and meet with the public and try to get the message out.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
You know, my architectural career now, there's a requirement to signify that the use of California certified water closets or toilets. And if we want to do a LEED certified building or a Build a Green building, we specify Energy Star appliances. So
That's
that
good.
those are the new requirements.
Yeah, and, California's on the leading edge always. We had our water conservation in place before it was mandated elsewhere in the country. So we've always been on the leading edge, and proud Californian to say that.
There we
but,
go. Yeah.
but so we offer a lot of services like that. So I like to think of us as a clearinghouse for information on water use. So anybody has questions about their water use, they can contact me. So.
Now, when you go and visit homes and do a little a water assessment, do you check their irrigation system and for leaks, and
We
you
do.
Give them recommendations for upgrades, right?
Yeah, we have a program. It's called the Home Water Survey, where we'll actually meet with people at their home, go in and do a leak check. We check the other appliances in the home, make sure they're all hooked up correctly. We check the water softener, make sure it's set properly. We check their irrigation system, make sure that it's scheduled right for the season, it's running efficiently, and then we make recommendations and give them a recommended watering schedule.
Yeah. And I understand you're going to be out there at the trade show coming up May 12th.
Yeah, I really want to reach out to businesses because, as you know, I'm part of your committee where we're the Green Business Committee, and we try to help people get their green certification by helping them with their waste that they might have at their office or business. PG&E helps out with their electrical use, and then I help out on the water side. So not only is it good for the community, but it helps reduce costs for business owners. And it's a great marketing tool. Once you're green certified, you can have a little placard in the window, and people like that.
Cool.
Yeah.
Hey, but Sean, let me ask you this, the bottom line. What's the real reason you wanted to be the guest on this show?
I'm here today because May is Water Awareness Month, and it's just a good time for people to review their water usage because we're just heading into the peak irrigation season. So it's a good time for us to come out and meet with you. It's a free service, and just remind people to use water efficiently. We've had a lot of rainfall this year, a lot of snowpack. Our water supply is in good shape, but we can't get out of these habits of using water efficiently.
We need to be mindful to conserve our most precious resource, which is water.
Exactly, David. Yeah.
Well, Sean, thanks for being on the show again today, and it was a pleasure interviewing you. And I've been looking forward to seeing you being out there at the trade show May 12th.
You bet. We're working together.
The general public be out there too. It's gonna be a lot of fun.
Thank you, David.
You're welcome.
All right. Hi, welcome back to Going Green. I'm in this studio today with Bob Costa. He was with Pacific Water Management. Bob's been in the horticulture and the turf grass industry for 25 years, is it?
That's correct.
Yeah, that's great. And you're finally getting your just dues here because landscaping has become so topical lately, at least in my industry. And the cost of water keeps rising. And I know you do audits and you help people increase their irrigation efficiency to decrease their water usage. And the bottom line is to save this resource and also to reduce costs for people, right?
That's right, exactly.
Yeah, and that's so important because, like I said, the water rates are going up. So why is a landscape water audit important to people to start out with?
Well, it's a good place to kind of evaluate your outdoor water use. And the way I approach it is try to look at certainly the irrigation system and how efficient it's performing, but also other elements of water use in the landscape like plant material selection. Sometimes things like cultural practices that the manner in which we maintain our landscapes can have an impact on how much water it uses. So the focus is really just try to identify where there's opportunity to be more efficient.
Sure.
And then kind of present that to the client, and then based upon what the available budget is and what the water savings potential of those items are, to kind of develop a kind of an action plan to reduce water use and save the client money.
Do you see the same common problems over and over? Is it different at each site? Or?
No, I think generally speaking, I've done close to 100 audits of residential and commercial properties, and typically you see the same types of problems, and oftentimes they're problems that the landscape professional that's maintained the property doesn't really recognize as having an impact on water use. And some of those examples would be things like sprinkler heads that are below grade. And so when the system comes on, the nozzle is deflected. That kind of affects the coverage.
I see a lot of that.
And so when you have issues like that, what typically happens is that we tend to overwater to compensate for those areas of the landscape that may be stressed. So things like raising sprinkler heads, straightening sprinkler heads, checking nozzles, making sure that the application of water is uniform. And then the other component where I see lots of breakdown that really impacts water use is the scheduling of irrigation. So try to help clients perform a little bit better evaluation of how much water their landscapes need.
That's good. Yeah, I was at your seminar just yesterday that you gave down at Rancho Cañada, and you said if distribution uniformity is probably the biggest key, is it not?
Right, and I think it's a concept that most people don't really understand, and it's simply, what we try to do when we irrigate landscapes is to put the water on the landscape itself. And the more uniform we can, accomplish that, the less water we ultimately use.
Yeah, it makes sense. I can't tell you when I'm driving around town how many times I see sprinklers shooting on the sidewalks or out in the street. And if I could just get people to adjust their irrigation seasonally, that's half the battle.
Exactly.
But when you do a water audit, you give them a list of recommendations, and when you're done, obviously you give recommendations.
Yeah,
right?
the audit that I perform, includes a summary report. Part of that is a list of recommendations. I usually break it down into 4 categories: cultural practices, which would include plant material selection, because sometimes just altering the plant material mix, moving away from high water use plants to lower water use plants can certainly reduce water use. And then more of the irrigation performance issues, things that relate to the design of the irrigation system. And then a lot of breakdown occurs in the area of both installation and maintenance. Irrigation systems need to be maintained to operate efficiently. And unfortunately, for whatever reason, that component gets neglected a lot. So I try to break my recommendations down in those 4 areas. And then from there, we kind of develop a priority list.
Now, people, when you give them the recommendations, can they do it in phases? Or because money is always an issue, and sometimes people want to outlay a bunch of money all at one time. Can you do it in phases?
Absolutely. Yeah. Okay. I mean, and the objective is to really try to focus on the areas that have the greatest impact. I mean, we want to, certainly be conscious of budget, but we want to save as much water as we can. So we'll try to identify those and make those kind of the core recommendations. And then the other things kind of follow as money and time permits.
I come out a lot of myths out there. A lot of people think that less water is going to stress out their landscape. And isn't the opposite true sometimes, that they're putting on too much water?
Yeah, I mean, there's no question. I would say that most, if not all, landscapes are overwatered. And the way that we can kind of get away from that kind of thought process is when we schedule irrigation, we develop a runtime for various stations or zones. We need to really try to create a number, a runtime number that stresses the plant. And then move from that, add a few minutes to kind of find that appropriate runtime.
Sure.
Oftentimes we just, we choose a number that we think makes sense, and oftentimes that number is, a lot more than what the landscape really needs. So.
That's great. Well, I tell you what, could you give us your contact information, your website and phone number in case people want to contact you?
Sure, absolutely. The business name is Pacific Water Management, and my contact telephone number is area code 831-235-2576. Website is pacificwatermanagement.com, and all of that information is, of course, on the website. So.
Yeah, and I want to tell people, I know you're a teacher as well, and you teach at Monterey Peninsula College, and I was at one of your seminars yesterday, and Bob's one of the better teachers as far as breaking it down, because I'm not real technical, and you explained things in a way that was very easy for me to understand. So if you get a chance to take one of his classes, I highly recommend it.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, but I thank you for coming in the studio today, and
pleasure.
Be in touch with you. You're a wealth of information.
All right, great. Thanks.
Thank you.
Hey, you're watching Going Green, and this show is sponsored by the San Benito Chamber of Commerce. And with great pleasure, I'll introduce my guest is Abraham Prado, who is the Associate Planner with the City of Hollister. And I also understand that you're attending San Jose State for a major degree in Urban and Regional Planning.
That's correct.
Well, welcome to the show, Abraham.
Thank you, David. It's a pleasure to be here.
It's great having you.
Thank you.
You know, Abraham Abraham's been very active within the municipal code and getting a historic preservation committee and promoting awareness of the Mills Act. That's one of the reasons I have him on the show today. And speaking of historic preservation, they've said that the greenest building is the one that's already been built.
Yes.
And you know, preservationists and conservationists share this common theme that when you preserve a building, you're also conserving resources. That goes without saying.
Correct.
Back in the days when land was cheap and gas was cheap, we had a condition of sprawl, and you know, they said that unfortunately, when we had the sprawl, we had urban decay as a resulting of that, and buildings a lot of times before they were listed as historic buildings either fell under their own disrepair or were bulldozed into oblivion. So thank goodness what we have now is called historic listing, where these historic properties are listed and protected.
That's correct.
Perhaps, Abraham, you can tell the viewers a little bit about how a building can achieve a historic listing.
Absolutely, David. My pleasure. The City of Hollister, and I'll speak more towards the City of Hollister since I'm a planner, associate planner there with the city, has in the municipal code under Title 15, Building and Construction, criteria for historic listing of a site or structure for historic preservation. And basically that criteria that entails on Title 15 is very similar to that of the National Register of Historic Places. In fact, if the property in Hollister meets the criteria for the National Register or State Register for that matter, it automatically merits nomination for the local registry. As a matter of fact, right now, the City of Hollister has criteria. However, we don't have any active buildings or structures within our local listing. However, there are various ways, there are various methods that a property can list their property as a historic property. There are some common indicators, though, that I would like to share with you. For example, one, if it exemplifies or reflects special elements of the city's cultural, aesthetic, socioeconomic, architectural, engineering, or natural history. Also, if it embodies certain characteristics of a period of time or method of construction. Also, if it is identified with specific events in the history or specific people who have been very known or recognized either locally, nationally, or statewide level, or if the work has been done or built by a notable builder, designer, or architect.
Right.
Those are the main common indicators in which a property can be nominated for historic listing.
Okay, great. And how does one apply for a historic listing?
Okay, locally at the City of Hollister, what we do is we accept applications in the City of Hollister Development Services Department. Basically, the property owner would be the one who would submit to the City of Hollister Planning Department. And of course, we want to see that the application has a criteria regarding why it merits nomination to the historic listing. And so then the Director of Development Services reviews that application, and if the Director considers that this property does merit to be in a local listing, then what the Director does is then schedules a public hearing with the Historic Resources Commission. Right now, the City of Hollister City Council is our Historic Resources Commission. However, in November of 2010, just a few months back, they adopted an ordinance 1067, which basically allows for the formation of a new Historic Resources Commission, which would be advisory to the City Council. Right. So then that Historic Resources Commission evaluates the application, and if it determines that it does merit consideration to be on a local listing, then it would recommend that to the City Council. The City Council is the one that eventually would approve it or by a motion disapprove the listing, the property.
Wow, great. You know, you were mentioning one of the criteria for historic listing is the significant architectural features. And I can't help but thinking back in the days of Steinbeck's grandfather, he was a carpenter, and back in those days, a lot of times they made the windows on site instead of having them shipped out and just nailed onto the outside of the wall. A lot of those windows were recessed within the wall plane. And part of the beautiful thing about preservation is not only the resources that is being preserved, but actually in consideration of what is called embodied energy. And we've talked a lot about embodied energy on the show, and that's the energy that goes into the manufacturing of the product. Gosh, you know, in those days, they took a long time to make a home, a craftsman home. And the old world craftsmanship, and put a lot of time into the product. So not only are you saving the resources, but you're also conserving the embodied energy, or respecting the embodied energy of the product. Also, when it comes to old buildings and making them conserve energy, or making them more green, if you will, they had the old single pane windows, so you really have to, you know, kind of have minimal intervention into the building itself to make them green. I think historic buildings do deserve that consideration, because you don't want to compromise those features. But a lot of these older buildings were green in their own way. For example, the buildings and the homes in the southern areas where the climate was warm have a lot of higher ceilings, and they use stacked ventilation so they could, you know, cool those buildings naturally. And then the buildings in the northern climates, they usually had smaller window areas and thicker walls. So the older buildings were kind of green in their own ways. So in your view as a planner, perhaps you can tell us a little bit about the advantages for historic listing.
Absolutely, David. Yes, there are various advantages for historic listing. And aside from environmental and economic advantages, I think it's very important that we all think about historic properties as, or a historic district as, or even historic preservation as preserving the unique sense of place, the unique sense of community in our communities, especially within historic districts. I think that's very key. Advantages also include stimulating local economy. That's also very, very key. And going forward with all the environmental and economic reasoning behind or supporting historic preservation. For example, you mentioned embodied energy. Well, with the embodied energy, historic preservation keeps that in a building. And so if demolition comes through, if instead of property owner says, well, my building is too old and I'd rather just demolish it, then what happens there is the community not only loses the structure, but it also loses all that embodied energy that came in originally with the construction, the human and mechanical energy that went in to the building.
Right, and then all that's left is a photograph, I guess.
Exactly.
And all the wonderful, for example, that is part of the history of the community and part of their sense of identity.
That is correct. And then from there, also demolition in a way entails reconstruction. So a lot of the times when there's demolition, we see that there's demolition because there's reconstruction coming forth. And so a thing about that is that usually with reconstruction, we need a lot of natural resources that get implemented. And so with preservation, what it does is it lessens the need for the use of resources, natural resources. And so, not to say, I mean, I'm a planner, and I'm all for economic development. I'm all for smart growth, and I'm all for meeting the housing needs in our communities. But I think there's a midpoint to where it is important that we also make sure that we preserve our historic stock, especially if it merits keeping it because of its historic attributes. Also, economically wise, if a structure is demolished, then eventually a lot of the debris and a lot of the construction waste ends up in the landfill. And a lot of the times, a lot of municipalities, the landfills are run by the municipalities, which basically means taxpayers' money. And so in a way, preservation avoids all this construction waste to go into landfills. You mentioned thicker walls. Historic properties, a lot of the times they are associated with thicker walls, which allows for lessening of the energy for cooling or for heating. And so energy conservation is key.
Yeah.
One very important aspect as well when it comes to advantages is a lot of the historic properties had planning details that oriented a structure or building in a certain way where it provided for natural ventilation, natural lighting.
Right.
And so that's key in regards to preserving that energy and so forth.
Reminds me of the previous discussion we had on solar orientation. I also wanted just to mention is that the Historic Preservation Committee is more like advisory and they want to promote incentives. And we talked about the Mills Act. Perhaps you can just tell us a little bit about the Mills Act and what that's all about.
Sure. The Mills Act was implemented, David, in order to provide an incentive for that property owner who has a historic structure. And basically what it is the city or the municipality would have to agree to that program first and then basically go into a contract with the willing property owner. And that contract basically specifies that he or she will maintain the property and as a historic property. And as an incentive, the property owner gets tax relief.
Great, great. Well, is there anything else that you wanted to mention about?
Just real quick, there is a lot of incentives. I recommend people to look into the California, into this search engine for California Historic Office of Historic Preservation. There's a list there of a lot of incentives in the form of grants.
You know, and one of the incentives I have to say, because as an architect I know about the Historic Building Code.
That's right.
And the Historic Building Code does offer some leniency, for example, on structural upgrades.
That is correct.
It's basically about 70% of bringing it up to the standards specified by the California Building Code.
That is correct.
And also there are some leniency granted in other aspects, for example, some of the ADA and energy conservation.
That is correct.
So that has to be stated. Well, do you know when we talked about the Historic Preservation Committee, do you know when that might come about?
Yes.
When is that scheduled for that to be formulated?
Formulated, yeah. The Historic Resources Commission for the City of Hollister applications should be coming up pretty soon, hopefully within this next month of May. For those who are interested in being a part of this commission, if you live in the City of Hollister, you could contact the Development Services Department or City Hall, and we'll be glad to provide information.
And how many members is that board?
It would be formed of 5 members. 5 members, 2 of the members would have to be either owners or reside in one of the 2 historic districts that the City of Hollister currently has.
Right.
There would have to be 1 member would be from the Hollister Downtown Association. 1 member would be a good standing member for the Historical Society of San Benito County.
Yeah.
And then another member with knowledgeable of historic preservation.
You know, speaking of our town, we mentioned we have 2 historic districts. One is on San Benito Street from 4th to South Street, I believe, which is part of the National Historic Register of Places, where some of those buildings are contributing buildings. I know some of the buildings, and there's the other historic district is on Monterey, where there's a nice smorgasbord, relatively eclectic of different styles of homes there that are certainly part of the charm of our city.
Absolutely.
And although we've had earthquakes, I know back in those days they used great materials, very solid. So they're still standing today.
Absolutely.
Well, Abraham, I really want to thank you for coming on the show today. And did you want to say put the phone number for the Community Services Department if members want to be apply for the Historic Commission? Any
information, City of Hollister, our number there is 831-636-4360, and we're located at 420 Hill Street.
All right, great. Well, it's great to have you on the show today.
My pleasure, David. Thank you.
Okay, good luck to you in the future.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Hey, welcome back. I want to thank Sean Novak, Bob Costa, and Abraham Prado for appearing on the show today. And our theme, I guess, was conservation and preservation. Those are two significant themes for our Going Green show. And I want to thank you for tuning in today and watching Going Green, and we're looking forward to seeing you next time. And unfortunately, my guest for the nuclear fusion and fission was not able to attend today, so we'll see if we can get him on next show. So we'll see you next time on Going Green.